Guys, lunges. Now, they're very, very popular in the gym. But watch anyone doing lunges. The first thing they think that they've got to do is add a lot of load. I disagree with that. Why do I disagree with that? Well, just like everything that I try and teach, I've got to have a reason behind everything that I kind of tell you either not to do or to do. If you think of the muscular structure of your hip, you've got everything around it. You've got adductors of the inner thigh, you've got quads, you've got hamstrings, you've got glute med, glute max, all the stabilizing muscles in and around the hips and the hip flexors. One of the things that people don't really think about is the fact of whether they're stable enough. So they increase the load time and time and time again, but become more unstable. So I'll just show you what you normally see in the gym. People add the dumbbells, they're down, they're wobbly, they're up, they're down, they're wobbly, and they're up. Well, that's like trying to watch a baby calf walk, all right? The instability is telling you that you're not in control of the muscles that you're actually supposed to be training. And most people don't even have a thought process before they start training of, okay, what muscles are supposed to be involved in this exercise? I'm gonna do a lunge legs. Am I doing lunges for glute and hamstrings? Am I doing a lunge focus more for quads? And that's something you need to decide before you do the session. If you're trying to do it for glute and hamstrings, you need to be thinking whether or not you're also, whether you're stable enough to be able to perform the exercise right. So what are the precursor exercises to becoming a lot better at doing things like lunges? Well, before I show you what a lunge should look like, go back over what I've just said. Adductors, quads, glute med, glute max, hamstrings are all essential components when it comes to doing any form of lunges. If you're weak across any of those, you're going to move away from the muscle that's trying to be trained in the lunge to try and make it easier on yourself. Lunges are a single leg exercise. Whilst the training leg does actually support you, you really should be placing most focus on the front leg, okay? And if you haven't got the stability in that front leg, what tends to happen is that you just lean the dumbbells forward and you do kind of like traveling walks as opposed to loading the muscles up and using the muscles to extend through. So go around the gym and say to yourself, am I strong in the hamstrings? No, well, let's train the hamstrings first. Let's get them strong. Am I strong in the glutes? No. Well, let's train the glute med, glute max in all the variations of the exercises first and get them strong. What about quads? What about adductors? Are my adductors actually very, very weak? More than likely for most people, yes, but I still see trainers and people on their own doing walking lunges up and down the gym thinking they're gonna make their legs bigger, but in fact, they're just traveling along the floor getting movement done, okay? So we're now gonna think about what is the lunge, what are you trying to get out of it, and how do you actually perfect the exercise according to what you want out of it. Two different types of lunges. We've got short step walking lunges, and we're gonna have a longer step walking lunges. One is gonna be primarily a quad focused exercise. The other is gonna be primarily focusing a hip dominant glute and hamstring focused exercise. So, how do they both look? And then we're gonna break them down. So without dumbbells, a short focus one, okay? And then we're gonna have a little more of a long step focused one. Okay, two differences. The two differences with those exercises, one is more of a knee dominant exercise, the other one is more of a hip dominant exercise. The shorter step version is more of a knee dominant exercise. I'm staying upright, which therefore will place more tension on my quads. The other one is a longer step, which means I'm taking less knee flexion out of the exercise, and I'm creating flexion at the hip. Now that flexion at the hip places length into the hamstrings and also places length to the glutes. Now at that point, when I'm in that fully lunged position for the longer step version, I'm then having to consciously think of stepping out of it using hip extension. So this movement is hip extension. This is knee flexion. So those two things that you have to think about when you're doing either or. So quad focus one, your intention will be, first, this is how we're going to do it. Quad focus one is going to have a knee focus, back knee touching the floor, and then you're extending the knee through, okay? So it's a knee extension. So think about when you're doing a leg extension. You're going to stay upright because you don't want this stretch forward here. You want to take the loading off here and go down onto the quad, and then you're pushing toe, and then the knee is extending. That is going to be a quad focused lunge, okay? The other thing you need to consider with that exercise is when you are here, that you're pushing from the quad out and extending the knee backwards. So that is how you get the exercise to be more of a quad focus. The next version is going to be a longer step. Now watch this. I get less knee bend, I get more hip bend, loaded up, and my hands are just behind my knees. Now from this position here, my intention is to not push the knee back, it's actually going to be to bring the hip through. So I'm thinking, when I'm here, less of bringing that down and more about bringing the hip through and contracting the glute at the top. So if I go from there, I'm going to extend the hip through and extend the hip through and contract the glute. So what you've just seen then really is what most people don't understand is you've got a knee dominant shorter step, bolt upright is going to be very much more quad focused and more of a hip focused exercise, hamstrings and glutes. Think about where they're placed. Think about whether you should do them, whether you should use them. And you're going to feel so much difference when you're training your legs. Now, let me also say this to you. Due to the nature of you not being able to lift a lot of load, comparable to things like the squats, leg press, hack squat, it makes more sense to place these later on in the workout when the legs are a little bit more fatigued, when you've had more chance to actually warm up the muscles around the hip joint, you have more chance to actually put your development, put your real effort into the more locked in or fixed exercise where you can use a lot more load, and then bring these in later to the session, okay, later into the workout. A lot of people are putting them very, very early on, fatiguing their legs when they could actually be putting a lot more load through different exercises. Now, the last thing I'll say about the split squats, okay, sorry, about the lunges, is remembering that everything's got to be under control. So when you're in this position here, let's do the quad one. When you go down, it's not a case of just shuffling yourself forward along the floor. It's a case of going down and contracting the muscle out, you see? Contracting the muscle out, as opposed to what a lot of people do from here, is just literally bouncing up and down, bouncing up and down. So keep everything under control, keep the muscle tense, and I promise you, you're going to get a hell of a lot out of the two variations I've just taken you through.